Hello and welcome to Anarchy in the Ukulele with me, P.Man. Today I'm going to do a tutorial all about hammer-ons and pull-offs and how to do them. So what are hammer-ons and what are pull-offs? A hammer-on is where you're going from a low note to a higher note and you're only striking it once with your plucking hand, and your fretting hand is making the second sound. You're hammering on. Okay? A pull-off is where you're going from a high note to the low note. Again, you're striking it once with your plucking hand, and the second note is sounded by pulling off the finger on your fretting hand. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll break this video down into two. I'll deal with hammer-ons first and then pull-offs. What I'll do, I'll play you a piece by Ferdinando Carulli. This is called Andantino, and this would have been written as a study for hammer-ons and pull-offs because there's quite a few in it, and it starts with a pull-off. So I'll play this piece first off and then we'll break down how best to do them. So that's Andantino by Carulli. So let's have a look at hammer-ons first. The way that hammer-ons are notated in music, if we look here, you can see these numbers 1 to 3 where my fingers are. There's a little sort of almost like an eyebrow or sort of bracket on the side. That's notating that you hammer on. Years ago in music they used to put H.O above it for hammer on, or P.O for pull off, but that seems to have sort of fallen out of fashion now, and they just put a little curve. You'll know if it's a hammer on because it's always going from a low number to a high. So for example, from a 1 to a 3 is a hammer on. You'll know it's a pull off because it's going from a high number to a low number, like 3 to 1. Now, hammer-ons are often used to speed pieces up. So if I'm playing, for example, just 2 notes from C to D, there's only a certain speed that I can play them. But if I hammer on, I can play much, much quicker. But initially we want to concentrate on keeping the timing slow to really get a good hammer-on. So when we do a hammer-on, the best way to learn them is to hammer on from an open string initially. So hammer on from an open string and use your first finger. Your first finger tends to be your dominant finger and your strongest finger. So you're going to play the note, the open string. In this case I'm playing an open E, and I'm then powering on with my index finger. The clue's in the name, hammer on. Don't just put on gently like that, really hammer on. If you don't get enough power in it, you'll get too much of a dip in volume. You'll get this, where the volume's going down. It will always go down a little bit, but realistically you want the second note to be virtually the same as the first. So when you're first practicing, just do it from an open note to a higher note. Okay? Likewise, I could then go from a C up to a D, and this time I'm going to use my second finger to hammer on. As you land, it's important that you don't bend the string. Don't go so hard that you go and bend it. Okay? That will sound awful. Okay? So that, in its most basic form, is a hammer on. Like that. Okay? You can also hammer on from one finger to another. So for example, I can hammer on here from an F to a G. So sometimes it will be more than one fret that you're hammering on. When you get to using your pinky, it actually gets quite tricky because your pinky tends to not be that strong when you first do it. Probably the most sort of famous piece in rock music using hammer-ons and pull-offs is Layla by Eric Clapton. And that's just very quick hammer-ons and pull-offs. Okay, you can do things like double hammer-ons. So I can hammer on up 2 notes chromatically, or 3 notes even. Okay, so it's not just always 1 fret at a time. The longer you leave the note ringing, the harder you've got to hammer down. The quicker you do it, the louder it tends to be because it hasn't run out of kinetic energy. But in this piece in Andantino, it's really important that you keep your timing because all the notes are the same length here. So you don't want like that. Keep it even. Okay, likewise. So let's have a little talk about pull-offs. Pull-offs, they're pretty much the opposite to a hammer-on. I would say they're a little bit harder. When you first practice a pull-off, do it on the top A string. Reason being, if you're doing it on a different string, your fingers will catch these strings and you've sort of got to navigate your way around. So let's just start. We're going to pull off from the 3rd fret to an open A. So from C to A. Now, there's a bit of a knack to this. It's not a lift off. If you play note and just lift off, the 2nd note, the volume will really diminish. So you've got to pull off to one side. So if you look at my finger, it's coming across. That's where the danger is when you're doing it on another string. That the danger is you catch this and get this. Because I'm hitting that string. Okay? So remember, as you pull off, don't just lift up like that. Pull across. You almost get a little click as your skin gets caught on the string. Okay? So start with a C and pull to an A. Again, with pull-offs, you can pull off to another finger. So I could pull to a B flat, to a 1. I can do it with a 2. And again, the hardest one is when you have to pull with your pinky. Try if you can and keep your natural spacing. So by that I mean if you're pulling off from 6th to 3rd, try and pull off with your pinky. Don't be tempted to change it to a 3rd finger just because that finger's stronger. If you always avoid doing hammer-ons and pull-offs with your pinky will never get any stronger. Okay, so remember to pull off to the side. As you do it on this string here, it gets harder because you've got to navigate a little bit of not pulling that string. What I tend to do, for example, if I was pulling off from a G to an F, I actually try and mute that string there, the top A. This finger is gently muting it so that I don't get and hit that. Okay. Now there's a few advanced things that we can do here. If you're doing hammer-ons, as we talked, you can also do that with pull-offs. So I can pull off 1, I can pull off 2, I can pull off 3. That's really cool, doesn't it? Likewise, you don't have to be, so there I'm not missing any frets out, I'm doing it chromatically, as they say. Here I could, for example, miss frets out. Likewise, when I'm hammering on, I could do it chromatically, or I could do it more like that. The other thing you can do, obviously, you can hammer on to more than one string. So I could hammer on to 2, okay, or I could hammer on to 3, or I could even hammer on to 4, like that. Okay, likewise I can pull off more than one. Quite often if I'm strumming chords, I will in fact hammer on. Like that. It's a great little technique to use. Like that. You can also then combine hammer-ons and pull-offs together, and then we get into the whole sort of doing trills and mordants, etc., which is a bit more complicated. But once you've sort of mastered that, there's a lot you can do with it. So initially take it really slow with your hammer-ons, hit really hard, and when you pull off to the side. Okay, well, I hope that's helped. If you've got any questions about hammer-ons or pull-offs, feel free to ask. And he said don't ask. Make sure you do ask. Thanks very much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to ring that bell. Bye now.